Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Midnight Terrors podcast. Here's a little intro clip for you. I'm your co-host today, Kevin, here with Jason and some very special guests of the show. But Jason, do
Of
your
course. Well, you didn't say our names, so
you can say our names.
we have Diamond Jason, and we have Bucky, and we have Mr. J and Mrs. J.
Oh
So
boy, do we. And what is
Glad
this
to be
show
here.
called, bro?
on.
What's this show
What's
called,
up?
bro? Come on now.
Oh, it's the Midnight Terrors podcast.
Yeah, there we go. Anyway, so welcome back to the show, everybody. All of us are sitting in the lobby right now because we are eagerly awaiting the arrival of Stephen Cognetti, the writer and director of the Hell House LLC movies. We're about to speak with him, but it's Mrs. J's first time on. Mr. J's returning. What's up, Mr. J?
What's up, brother? We're having a good time.
Oh boy, aren't we? But Mrs. J, welcome to the show for the first time.
I'm so excited.
Oh yeah, and before we talk
I can't do it with Mr. J. He's too much.
He's not enough, sir.
Right.
Oh,
Exactly.
Well, he might be enough.
there's not enough Mr. J to go around, all right? But
This is true.
is
But
he
that's-
just
but that's why we
upset that I
brought-
haven't hit him with a good special midnight terror?
oh, Jason, you're about to lose your
That's what
spot.
you do.
But anyway, that's how
I probably am.
we needed more Mr. J in our life. So we brought in, I guess, his better half, right? We brought in Mrs. J.
So
Okay.
much better.
Mrs. J is so much better.
So sorry, I did not mean for this to be an all-out war on Mr. J, but Mrs. J, welcome to the show.
No,
I'm
it
so
is.
Thank you.
I'm so
it is a
excited.
war on Mr. J.
Anyway, I am so excited to have you on, Mrs. J. As I said, we're all eagerly awaiting talking with Stephen Cognetti of
Yes.
writer-director Hell House LLC movies, the writer-director of the Hell House LLC movies, and we're coming full circle because you and Mr. J introduced myself and Jason to these films. But before we dive into that, we've got to do our usual intro whenever we get a new guest. So, Mrs. J, you're in the hot seat right now. Tell us,
She is.
where did you get your start in horror? And Jason, what's your question, sir?
Which movie fucked you up, Mr. J?
Yeah, so my start in horror is kind of interesting because as a kid, I was scared of everything. But I had a grandmother that was way into horror. And so she kind of showed me, I think, like The Predator or something. And I was like, nope, not for me. This junk's scary. I'm out of here. So I think she maybe kind of lit that spark a little bit, though, because then somewhere, I don't remember how old I was, but I just was like, you know what? I'm going to watch Halloween. I'm going to see what this horror stuff's about. And then like loved it. It just ignited in me. Anyway, and so I don't even, like I said, I don't know what age that was, but it was definitely a lot later, though, because I was a pretty scared kid, like I'm truly everything. But anyway, but Halloween was my first kind of introduction into horror and loved it. And I'm still in love with Michael Myers. He's amazing. Anyway, and then so
Why is it that everyone is terrified by Halloween?
I
get it.
Because
But I
it's a
love
scary
it.
film, dude.
I get it. No, and it's definite.
Apparently, you don't get it. Why is everyone scared of
Right.
Halloween?
You're
It's
asking
a
the
scary
question.
film, and then you're like, I know it is, but why is everyone scared?
Well, it wasn't mine.
Okay, well,
okay.
we're all different people,
Okay,
bro.
all right,
Calm down.
Okay, sorry.
You also
sorry.
don't like killer clowns, so
Oh, that's a low blow.
Oh,
Oh, okay. So what movie messed me up? We're gonna go there, right? Change
Killer
the subject.
Clowns from Outer
Yeah,
Space,
that's
right?
where we're at.
No, I'm just kidding.
yeah,
Go
so-
ahead.
No, it's fine. I kind of have several movies that messed me up, so I'll just real quickly just
Rock
say
'em out.
the lady in the bed in Pet Cemetery. That whole scene, the
Oof.
sick lady. I'm forgetting her name and all that. That messed me up.
Zelda.
Fire in the Sky. I did watch when I was a kid. Terrible idea for a kid that was scared of everything because that movie messed me up. And then the fourth kind, the first Saw, and then that's about it. But yeah, so those kind of all together sort of are movies that messed me up.
Oh, Zelda from
Zelda,
Pet
yes.
Sematary. I mean, Zelda, she is a creepy character, and I don't know
Very
why we
so.
haven't done the original Pet Sematary yet on the show. That's got to happen sometime soon in year 2. Fire in the Sky, I just saw when we did an episode on it, which was insanely creepy.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then what was number 3? I know there was the first Saw. The third one
The
was
fourth kind. Mr. J and I, we have a cute story about the fourth kind. So if you ever decide
Fourth
to do a
kind
podcast-
is good.
Oh,
Yeah.
the fourth kind is terrifying. We are gonna do an episode on that with you and Mr. J as guests for
yeah,
sure.
let's do it because we've got a good kind of relational story about that movie. So
yeah.
Oh,
yeah, it'll be fun.
Relationship goals, the episode.
Funny.
Beautiful. I love Mr. J's radio silence right now.
Right?
Dude,
It's a
It's
good
so
one.
good.
It's a good one.
I just love that we're like, let's gush about Mrs. J, and Mr. J is just like, I'm right here.
Listen, I'm just smiling because I agree with you. She's amazing. She's better
Oh,
than
yeah.
everything, and I love her.
No, don't
That's
we
what-
have somebody to talk to?
That's why he married her. There we go.
Dude, I love that you guys love her, and I could not agree more.
Yeah,
Of
there we
course we
go.
do.
We do. And as we're wrapping that up, thank you, Mrs. J, for the awesome answers. And
thank
now
you.
you all listening are about to see our interview with Stephen Cognetti, writer and director of the Hell House LLC movies. Thank you, everybody, for watching, and enjoy the interview.
Yeah, I can't wait.
Peace.
Peace.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Midnight Terrors podcast. I am your co-host here with several co-hosts, but I'm going to start with the one, you know him, you love him, Jason.
Yeah, buddy. Jason Diamond.
And what's this show called?
I was supposed to call it the other way, but anyways, it's the Midnight Terrors podcast.
Yes, it is, Jason. And we are here with something very special tonight. First and foremost, we want to welcome our other co-hosts for the evening, one returning guest and one new guest, the very mysterious guest co-host that we haven't had on yet. So we want to first welcome back Mr. J. What's up, buddy?
Glad to be back.
It is good to have you back, brother.
It's great to be back.
And could we say we're welcoming your better half to the show tonight?
Oh, yeah.
We would like to welcome to the show Mrs. J. Hello.
Hello, happy to be here.
Yeah, it's good to have you on for the first time after. I can't believe it took a year and a half to do so.
Yeah, it's pretty lame.
Too long.
Step it up, would
And
you?
she's the crazy coolest lady on the planet. So
Okay, I think
True.
that.
There we go.
Guilty as charged.
Compliment city all around tonight. I love it. But we're all here together with a very special guest on the show here tonight. You all have seen me post about a couple of films on our Instagram from this franchise. And it's full circle because Mr. and Mrs. J actually introduced us to these films. And we are so honored tonight to have the writer and director of the Hell House LLC movies, Stephen Cognetti. Hello, gentlemen. How are you?
Hey, thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Of course. It's the pleasure is all ours. And how's your day going so far?
Day is just winding down. Got the kids fed, and as I told you before, they got the goldfish fed, and so that kind of spells the end of my night. So this is a good ending to my night right now. Talking to you guys, meeting everyone here.
Yeah, that's I mean, that is a full day right there. Kids fed, goldfish fed. We all we all should aspire to such things. I love it.
Yeah, it's a crazy day, just
No, but Stephen, it is such an honor to have you all. I can speak for everyone on here when we say that we are big fans of the franchise Hell House LLC. And again, Mr. and Mrs. J introduced myself and Jason to it, so now it's like full circle getting to talk to you about it. So we're excited.
That's cool. Thanks. And yeah, most people that find out about Hell House, it's always word of mouth from someone they know. And that's how really it got out there and got known is just, and thank you, Mr. and Mrs. J, for spreading the word and telling people. I appreciate that.
Always.
So thank you for making a movie that is easy to be excited about and share with people.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, before we jump into talking about those movies, we always start off the exact same way whenever we get a new guest on the show, and we myself and Jason sort of tag team this question. So we always start with new guests. Where did you get your start in horror? And Jason, you want to throw out your signature question?
Yes. Which movie fucked you up?
Yeah, that's a good. Well, I've always wanted to be a filmmaker my whole life, ever since I was a little kid. But I never really thought I was going to venture into horror movies. But I've always loved horror too, my whole life. When I was a kid, growing up in the '80s as a little kid, I remember trying this accidentally once, stumbling upon Nightmare on Elm Street, and I couldn't sleep for weeks, and that just terrified the idea, because of the idea behind it. If you fall asleep, then you're dead. So it was just, to me, that was just so brutal and horrifying. But then when I started to really appreciate horror movies and watching more of them and expanding them, to this day, my favorite horror movie is The Exorcist. It's just my favorite. That's just my kind of horror. I love anything to do with like demons and on the paranormal side though. But that, when I was a kid, after I watched The Exorcist, probably too young of an age, when I go to sleep at night, I was just so certain that I'm like, my bed's gonna start shaking. I know it. It's just gonna start shaking at any moment, and just feeling like it's like something demonic is gonna just take presence in my room, and it terrified me forever. To this day, I think it holds up. I love what they did in that movie.
Absolutely.
So is that like one of your favorite movies? Or is that one that you cannot watch again by yourself?
No, I can watch it by myself now, and but now I just appreciate it more from like a filmmaking standpoint, what they did, the sets they built, how they did the effects, all practical, and they just scared you in a way that was that's just I don't think you get it too much this day. You get a lot of too many effects, and that's just like classic filmmaking in its best form in horror filmmaking. So I just appreciate it more on a different level now, but at the time, it just terrified me so much.
Yeah. So you think that would be your most terrifying moment?
I mean, I think seeing Linda Blair full out demon it really wrecked me as a kid. I mean, there's so many go ahead.
I 100% agree with you, because I think the first movie that I saw that really terrified me was Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but right behind it was The Exorcist. So I get it.
Yeah,
that's a cool film too. You go back, I mean, that's just old style filmmaking, the way they did that, and it's just I just appreciate all that kind of filmmaking, especially Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I mean, when she like talks in like different voices to try to intimidate the priests, and like it's so subtle, it's not like anything that's kind of like jumping out at you, but it's just so terrifying. It just makes the hairs in the back of your neck stand up when she talks in like those crazy voices and stuff.
Yeah, we've touched on that in several episodes, where the decade of the 70s, especially when it comes to horror, like people seem to have a difficult relationship with, because if you don't like things that take their time more and are more atmospheric, you might have a hard time with it. But the 70s was so masterful at capturing atmosphere and giving you that hair standing up on the back of your neck. So it's
don't even start on the allowing things to take their time. I love that, and the biggest note I get in my films are can we get through Act One quicker and faster? And I'm like, that's not. I like slower burns, and
Yeah.
at least on the original, I was able to do that. But I do appreciate something that takes its time and slowly builds as it goes. And you don't have to just hit people with stuff like in the first act and it is boom boom boom. You can get to it and graduate to it. And yeah, The Exorcist is a slow burn. It's great. The way things are just so, you don't even know anything's going on, but things are, and it's just, and it builds. It's great.
I love
Yeah,
it.
absolutely.
So, touching on, I want to ask real quick, because you were talking about you always wanted to be a filmmaker your whole life.
Yeah.
What were even outside of the realm of horror, what were the films or the directors that made you want to get into directing and writing films?
I'm always embarrassed to say this. I've been asked that question a few times. I am in love with James Cameron, and I always was since the '80s, since The Abyss.
Nothing
That
wrong with that.
Terminator, Alien 2, and I loved everything he was doing, and that's why I always saw myself as something that was more of like adventure, action, something like that. And I just loved everything he did as a filmmaker. He was always pushing the boundaries, and because of that, I think everything he does pushes the boundaries so much that I think he's evolved filmmaking more than anyone else. Because if you think what he did in Abyss. And in Terminator 2 inspired what they were going to do with Jurassic Park. If he didn't do the water tantrum CGI effect and do with the liquid metal and stuff like that, then really they wouldn't have known what the potential was to make these CGI dinosaurs. And then he always takes it to a new level. And then and what I love about the movie Titanic is that it's just as great classic filmmaking as you get. They built the entire ship. I mean, like you don't get that anymore. They're not going to build. They make that movie now. They're not building the ship.
Right.
They're not sinking the ship. And they're not building another like what was it, 100-foot miniature of the ship to blow and break in half. Like cool practical effects like that. And his movies always had the best practical effects. The Abyss is so cool. They built, the way they shot that flooding of that huge tank, that old nuclear power plant. And they just filled that with I don't know how many gallons of water, and then built all these miniatures like at the bottom of that, and then had all their actors had to go dive, learn how to dive, and do that every day. That's filmmaking you don't see anymore. You never will. And it was crazy what he did back in the day. So I always loved him back in the late '80s, early '90s when I was getting into filmmaking. I was like, James Cameron is badass. I love what he's doing, and so that was probably an early influence for sure.
I mean, yeah. I mean, like Jason said, you can't go wrong with those films. He is. But
you can't say when we were in film school, you get asked that question. You got to say something way more out there, and see, you're not allowed to say stuff that stuff in film school. So
that's awesome.
Funny.
No, you're not allowed to say that in film school. But the first time, or the first class that I took in film school, my professor was like, if you're gonna make good films, you need to know how to make good films or watch good films. And the first thing he showed me was The Road Warrior. And that was way up my alley.
Beautiful.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Well, we all have, pretty much a round table of questions for you. Because like I said, I think I can speak for all of us that we absolutely love the Hell House LLC movies. And again, thank you to Mr. and Mrs. J for introducing those films into our lives. And thank you for making them. We all kind of wanted to start in the same place of where did the idea for just the whole concept of Hell House LLC, what was that born from, and what was the creation process like?
It was like with everything I write, when I say everything as if I made like a catalog of films. I've only made 5, but it always starts with like a seed that just grows over time, and just think about it. And what is it? I started with the idea that I did want to make a movie about a haunted house gone wrong, and then from there, just that story just evolved over time in my head, writing out drafts that I hated, and it really took like about a year of just writing bad drafts. And I think that's a good process of writing, is writing badly first, getting all the bad stuff out of the way, and then before you can fine tune any script. But it started off as a narrative film, not a found footage film, and about people taking over a haunted house and redoing it, and but it wasn't like in the way it just wasn't anything. They didn't have like any hook to it. It just seemed very stale idea to me. And then one time I took a drive out of Rockland County. I was living in Manhattan at the time, and when you go over the GW Bridge into New Jersey, you take a right, you go to the Palisades Parkway, you're back into New York State, and you're in Rockland County, which is this beautiful country out there. And I came by this amazing abandoned house, and for some reason, it just clicked that like this is the house. This is where Alex takes over with his friends. They leave the city, and then the ideas start formulating more. Something goes wrong, but that's how we start the film, and we backtrack to try to figure it out. And it's just a process of like writing these scripts, figuring things out, putting layers under it, and getting to the place where I was like, this is the one I want to shoot with. This is the locked version of the script. Made it a found footage. Really want to do doc style because I love the way they did Lake Mungo. I thought Lake Mungo was an amazing found footage film, and I loved it being a documentary because it felt so much more real. It just really felt like everything I'm seeing are not paid actors; these are the people it happened to. So that's really I thought like, oh, like this is we can really explore this from a documentary setting. And I always love true crime documentaries, like like Datelines and stuff like that. So I just kind of told people, I'm like, it's like Dateline, but we're figuring out a mystery about a ghost, not about why someone killed their lover or something.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's
that's very cool.
Yeah,
no, I was just saying that's very cool. I like where you're coming from, and especially all these years later, kind of doing a found footage kind of thing, is it's not different, but you had a good push with it, or had a good different way to do it, and I really enjoyed it.
It did feel fresh.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, that's I always thought if I was going to
it-
do a found footage film, it was going to have to be a different angle. And the different angle I wanted it to do was not only do a doc form, but like, and the doc form helps this, but I always wanted to have a found footage film that really explains where the footage came from, why we're seeing the footage, how we're seeing the footage, how it's being, why it's cut the way it is and presented to an audience. With a lot of footage films, which I love them all. I think they're all the great, like Grave Encounters and Blair Witch. Like these are great, really scary movies. But you don't get where like you're just presented the raw found footage and not shown like why are we seeing these parts and this parts. And what the only thing I wanted to do differently was just make sure like we're presenting you a cut documentary. Someone edited this, chose these moments out of the footage they found and presented it to you in a finished documentary. That's the only difference I wanted. The different angle I wanted to take was really explain where the footage came from and why I got there.
Yeah, and
it doesn't even hit me as found footage in a weird way. Like it hits me as like so many of those other movies are synonymous with found footage, and almost like the found footage is the first foot forward about about those movies. This one feels like it lives much bigger than that genre. And I just I forget that it fits within the found footage genre sometimes. Personally, it just feels bigger, and I don't mean that to insult the others. I don't, but man, yeah.
No, thank you for saying that. That's very nice of you to say.
Yeah, that I love that twist on the found footage, because it is, especially coming out with the first one in 2015, around that era, we had seen a large chunk of them, and we all love that subgenre as well. But by that point we were like 6 Paranormal Activities deep, where it was like they found their niche, they found their formula that they were going to use, and then this comes along and it's like it's tapping into that true crime stuff and that documentary style filmmaking mixed with that. And I thought that was such a cool twist. And I was actually curious, when you were, as I guess during the writing process, watching this, I get the feel of like Unsolved Mysteries and like those classic urban legends. Watching it, were there any like legends that you grew up hearing, or local events in your lifetime, or just any events you heard about in your lifetime that kind of inspired you while you were writing this?
Yeah, no, nothing paranormal. I did try to mirror a real life tragedy that happened, and that was a fire, the Station nightclub fire, and that was in Rhode Island, and pyrotechnics caught flame, and so there was a local journalist that was there filming the band that was playing where their pyrotechnics caught, and what happened was that the local journalist was filming the whole time, and when the pyrotechnics caught fire, you can slowly see people are panicking. Some people don't really know there's a problem yet, and there's like a difference of like people who know there's a problem, people that don't. And the camera never cut. This guy was there with his camera. He took it from when the band started playing to when the fire caught, when people started realizing, and he took it all the way to getting outside in that rush, and it never and it was tough to watch, and I kind of like wanted to apply that to like, well, what if something similar happened in a haunted house, and like how would people react, and like some people knowing there is something to be worried about, and then some people not understanding it. Yeah, it's like similar to just what I always tell people in that scene in the opening, like, pretend like you're trying to get out of here as if this building's on fire. But you really don't know what's going on, but you just know, you see the panic in other people's eyes, and it slowly dawns on you. And so there was a little bit of a real life tragedy influence in that scene, particularly. But in terms of like myths or legends or ghost stories, not really any influences that. In the second Hell House, I did try to include like some kind of like I guess you would call them like urban mysteries, and kind of something that the hitchhiker kind of, everyone has that story, like if you go down this road at midnight you'll run into like the lady, and just like things like kind of like things like that story. So I tried to incorporate some like smaller little stories like that to start off too, but in the original not so much.
Okay. One of the best scares, by the way, in part 2 is the hitchhiker girl. That was probably my biggest jump, like watching all 3 of them sequentially. I was like, oh god.
Yeah, no, I thought I always love stories like that, like if like, and to me when I was writing that, I was like, I imagine this as if like people who are in the area of Abaddon like kind of know of like, if like it's like a whispered about, like if you go down this, there's that girl that's always looking for a ride to Hell House, and she died that night, and it's certain, you might see her, it's like, so in things that are whispered about stories, and then some people actually seeing her but not knowing the story, and that's where that came from. And but I love real stories like that, hearing like ghost stories like that, about local legends, is stuff like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. We're in the South, and I feel like we have plenty of those stories.
They're fun, like you want to like kind of like explore it yourself, like
yeah,
you see what happens. Oh, I go down near these train tracks, and something you're telling me I'll see a ghost at midnight, or whatever it is.
Absolutely.
We've all been there, right? Sneaking into haunted houses, or sneaking into somewhere where you can try to get a scare out of yourself.
Well,
it's fun. It's fun. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I love those kind of stories and hearing them, and yeah, that's great.
Love it. And then I gotta ask, are you yourself a fan of going to haunted houses? Because I love that this takes place in a haunted house at Halloween time.
yeah,
I am, but I don't get to many of them just because of where I am. But I love the idea of them. I love the what people do. I when I was writing this movie, I researched haunts. It's a whole community of people that build these things, these attractions, people that sell and create these props and go into making the music and all that stuff, where it's a whole industry and community, and great people. Talk to a lot of them. I love it. I don't get to a lot of myself, but I always try to get down to the back to the Abaddon Hotel Waldorf Estate of Fear, because that's a functioning Halloween haunted house every October. So I always go down there and do their tour every year, and talk to Angie, the owner, who was just so instrumental in helping me get Hell House off the ground. So that's the one I get to every year, just going back there.
Awesome.
And it's great because they incorporate a lot of stuff from the movie. They've changed some things, but some things are always still like they'll never change, like the bar and the dining room and the basement. Like that's all the same.
So I have a personal question. If you had to pick going to a haunted house or working in a haunted house, what would the Stephen Cognetti feel drawn to?
I would just like going to a haunted house. I don't have what it takes to performing one, like acting. I wouldn't
Yeah.
I wouldn't be scary at all. I would be like, run kids, and I would question myself. I'm like, I just sounded like a pirate there, I think. So I would be terrible as an employee at a haunted house.
You're
I
right.
love being on the other side, exploring a haunted house, seeing what they're doing, seeing the gags, and just like live in the atmosphere. It's just about, you know, like we fans of horror movies. We love October. We love the fall. It's just the best time of the year. And when you go to a haunted house around the Halloween time, it's just the best embodiment of like what we love. And it's fun. It's just so in season. It's a great feeling. It's like, you know, going to see when you're a kid going to see Santa Claus in December or something, you know.
Reach.
Well, so what I want to ask is, of course, there are a lot of like great gags or, you know, horror moments in the movie. Um, but like, do you think that you would be doing these gags just in a horror, like, you know, just in a haunted house if you didn't do this movie, or do you think that you were influenced with these gags from, you know, a haunted house, or how did you
I
go about that?
I think it's just the setting,
Because that's a big part of the movie. Is it, you
the
know,
gags within it. Yeah.
yeah,
So I think it's the well, and if I'm answering your question correctly, I think it's the setting that drives the scare. So once I have the story and kind of know what the settings, even if I haven't found the location yet, I'll explore pictures of locations that are like they will inspire me. Like this is like kind of looks like the haunted house I would like to film in. And as I'm writing, the scares will come from just the moment and just writing the scene and trying to figure out what would be a good scare for this part and what they're doing. But the one scare that stayed from first draft of the script to the final draft of the script and never changed at all was two of them. One was when they wake up in the middle of the night and the clown standing at the bottom of the stairs.
yeah,
Something once I knew I wanted to make something about a haunted house that they are staying at, like it's based in an abandoned place that the group is staying at. First thing I came up with, like, well, they have to have their props have to be moving and on them, and one of them is going to be
yeah.
a clown, and I would love for them to just wake up and just see that clown is where it's not supposed to be, and just their reaction to that. And that was one of the first scares I ever thought of, because that was the first horror movie I've written, so that's definitely the first scare I ever wrote or ever thought of. I just love that idea of it, and I love how we filmed it and the slow descent down the stairs towards it. And the other scare that stayed the same way was the strobe light scene with Paul when he's
Yeah.
that one was like once, and then that was another thing. I'm like, I know I want to work in a scare with a strobe light, because one thing I know about haunted houses, they always have strobe light rooms, and so I got to work that in somehow. And then I figured out it's like one of the workers is going to see something in the strobe effect, and it's not going to be there, and then it'll be there, and they're going to have their moment. But and that was the fun part. That's the fun thing about writing these movies, is trying to come up with cool scares. The challenging thing about 2 and 3 for me was coming up with new scares within the same exact location where we've been filming for a while. So that was the tough thing about sequels, which is why I'm excited about I was always excited about Hell House Origins, the one we just shot in April. Because it's a whole new story, whole new story within the world, but we're not in the Abaddon Hotel anymore. But it was a really tough thing. I'm like, how can I want to finish the story 2 and 3, but I don't know how to, you know, come up with new scares in the same location we've been in. So, but that was the biggest challenge of writing 2 and 3.
The 3, I guess, mannequins or bodies sitting on the floor,
Yeah.
like, which was great, and the heads turning, like, how did you come up with that, or what gave you the position for that?
Well, once I knew that, you know, where we're in this haunted house and they have props everywhere, I knew that my favorite kind of style of scare is the very subtle things that happen in the background and not something that's really jumping out at you and saying boo. And so I knew that a lot of that was going to rely on uncanny eye things that's just moving that you're not really sure, was that real, or is that, so I just that was just inspired for me, just wanting to play with the props in a way that's going to mess with the cast and the characters, and them not really being sure if what they saw was real or not, or did that move on its own. And it's just, but like us as the audience, we see that and we're like, that's not supposed to be there. And them questioning their own sanity and questioning why they're there, but never really having that boo moment yet. Like the thing that would definitely make them flee. That's, you got to walk that fine line of like, you want to just poke them a little bit, scare them a little bit, but we have to make this believable that they're going to actually stay there and not run. So if I come out, like someone comes out like, "Arr!" and tries to scare them, or like my pirate move from before, "Arr!" They'll flee, and we don't have a movie. We have a first act of a movie. I just wanted to do very subtle things and just like head turns, like did that head turn? I don't know, and questioning it. That's like, those are little things that will freak them out, but not cause them to flee.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I love in the more modern horror, is that people are realizing that, that, like you said, like somebody going at the screen, it's isn't really effective anymore.
Right.
It's kind of more of the, hey, did I see that or did I not see that?
Yeah, it's like jump scares.
then a
Like
payoff
sometimes
a
a
little
jump scare
bit
can be
later.
really effective. Yeah, sometimes a jump scare can be really effective. But sometimes it could be used very cheaply, just to get your heart going, but just for that, just for no other reason. So
I love that you said that, because I often regard that as cheap. If
yeah,
if
and
it's
that's
not,
the thing. It has to be genuine fear, and not
yes,
just, I just turned the volume up on you at the right time. And of course that will make anyone jump. But that's just, but you
yes.
have to, I think you have to earn the scare. You have to earn people's fear a little bit more than just having the boo moment.
Yeah, there's a difference between scaring people and startling people. If I
Right.
walk
Yes.
behind you with a snare drum and I'm there, but I'm still just gonna walk for 10 minutes behind you, and then occasionally I just hit it.
Yeah.
It's not like, oh, I scared you, Stephen. Like, no, I startled you, and it can be annoying after a minute.
Right.
Yeah.
It's funny you mentioned that you were worried about, I guess how can you still scare people in like 2 and 3? We watched 3 last night, and I was still just as scared in 3 as I was when I first watched the first one, particularly when Jane goes down into the basement and she's kissing the clown. That junk still scared me last night. And like, I'm telling you, nothing scares me. Like, I've seen all kinds of horror movies. This is why I love your movies so much. They are the first movies to scare me in a very long time.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. No, thank you. But I just wanted to kind of piggyback on some of these the freaks, as you guys called them in the movies. It seems like some of them had like actual bodies in them, like they might have been people dressed up, like maybe the clown was for sure. But I don't know if that was like a thing you did, or if I was just imagining that people were in them because the movie was so scary.
I think the freaks, especially in the strobe light scene, because I know that they refer to the freaks a lot in the strobe light scene.
Yeah.
How many freaks do we have in here? They're all mannequins except for the one that appears out of nowhere. That is an actor. Yeah.
Okay.
And
I just imagined it then. How good it was. I was thinking there's somebody in that thing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the thing. That's good for us though. If you don't know, it's not obvious either way, then I think that helps us. And when something does end up moving, and you aren't aware, like, that looks like a person, I'm not sure, and then it moves, you're like, oh, that's a person. So that's that's something. I think that we didn't have like too great of mannequins on the first one. We were using a lot of the dummies that Angie had on set, and we would dress them a certain way though, but and so then, which made things tough though, because a lot of times we needed things to stand, we needed heads to move when there was actually no actor in them. So you mentioned before about the heads, the 3 clowns in the basement, when they go into the basement looking for Paul, and that all 3 of the heads to turn. That was tough because there was only one of those one of them was a real person, the other 2 were fake. So so it was just like a gag. We had to have like someone there in the darkness, like waiting for the right moment to get the heads turned, and like, and they can't see a thing, so they don't even know if they have the heads positioned right at the right moment when the camera's turned away. So when the camera turns back, the heads are looking right at the camera this time. And we had to do that a couple times because like the person doing it turned in, like sometimes it just make it go backwards, or like one's looking this way, one's looking that. It was a mess, and, and that's fun about making these kind of movies. You got people like on the dark trying to get the gags right, and trying to set that all up and rehearse it is a lot of fun.
That's amazing. Thank you. That's cool.
Wow, you just
one story about the Jane in the basement in 3. That scare came from I wrote that scare because that's something actually we talked about in Hell House 1 one night when we were finished filming. Everyone goes back to the hotels after we finished at the Abaddon. And everyone was kind of freaked out by the Waldorf State of Fear because it's you get lost in there, it's dark, and when all the lights are off, nobody wants to be the last one in there because it's a freaky place. So when we're all in the cars and the place is dark, we asked. I was in the car, and I think I asked one of our PAs or someone. I said, like, would you how much would you want to be paid to go in there right now, go into the basement, and to sit next to the clowns? You don't get any like, would you do that? And she was like, hell no, there's no amount of money. I would never go, and just, it was just like, we were just throwing out dares. Well, would you do it for this? Would you do? And then I just took that conversation, gave it to the actors in 3. And so they were daring Jane to do the same thing we had talked about, daring one of our production assistants in 1, and just gave it to her. But she actually accepts the dare with the help of some alcohol. And it was fun. I like the way that came out.
I love that you brought that up too, about how that scene was born, because me and Mr. J were talking about this yesterday, just in anticipation of talking with you. All of the dialogue and the interactions between the characters feels so natural and real. Like, I believe that these people are friends. So was that a lot of your writing when it came to the dialogue? Was a lot of the dialogue on the fly? How did the actual dialogue between the characters usually come about for you?
On the original?
Mm-hmm.
It's mostly scripted with some improv put into it. But I think the best thing we did was it was a long process of casting and finding the right people, but just doing little things to get them to start molding early. We didn't really have a lot of time to get them together in the city. We had one table read in the city before we all met and left to go to the Waldorf, which is in Pennsylvania. I remember I just put them all in the same car, and I told Tony, Jared Hacker, I said, will you just get some road games going, make sure everyone's talking, play stuff like, whatever you do to pass the time, whatever those games are, stupid road games. And he's like, yeah, I got you, don't worry about it. And then when they get there, by the time we got to our hotels that night, everyone got out of the car, they were already kind of gelling, having fun and laughing. And then we start filming. We had a great first day filming, and that night they all went to the bar and got drunk together, and they had
That's the last thing you want your actors to do.
I was fine with it. I said, as long as you're showing up the next day, have a blast. And it was actually, and they were just gelling so much. And I saw it, so I was never gonna be like, no, don't go get drunk. I'm just more like, hey, if that helps you guys with your chemistry, go hang out. But in their defense, then they would just be hanging out afterwards all the time, like being in each other's rooms and screwing around, and then go to the bar. And that was great. And that helped on set too. And so much, the one night they drank too much. And that's when in the strobe light scene, Paul actually does throw up. That was real because he was hungover.
That's awesome.
So I guess they pushed it a little too hard that time, but.
Well, it worked. It worked for that scene for sure. Mr. J, did you have a question you wanted to throw out?
Yeah. So
Marvin Gaye.
your first feature-length movie ends up being like a genre classic. Your second and third are just as strong as the first one. Every ending is solid in a genre that really struggles with solid endings. You have like a fan base, you have fan groups on Facebook with thousands of people in them. And so really what I guess I just want to ask is, what's it feel like to be God's favorite?
Well, you're being way too kind.
Well, don't fillet too hard.
No, they're way too kind. That's so nice of you to say. I'm just glad that um what I wrote the movies to have my style of scares, and the style of scares I like are the subtlety stuff. And I'm just, every time I say, someone reach out to me and say love the movies, I'm like, that's another, we are simpatico in the style of scares that we like, and that's just anybody who appreciates that, then I'm just know that there is a broader audience, of myself included, of people who like that style of horror and scares. So it always just warmed my heart, not from like an ego sense when people say they love Hell House. I'm just kind of like, that's someone who likes my style of scares too. They'll like Mungo, or they'll like The Exorcist, or they'll like something like, like the Strangers. I love that moment in The Strangers with Liv Tyler early on in the film, where she's on the phone and you just camera just pans, and the guys, they're behind her, they're in the house. That nothing happens, nothing said, nothing goes boo. It is so terrifying. I love that scene. It's like, and that's my style. And I always just appreciate when other people like that style too, and don't just need the constant booze. And like slasher has its place.
Sure.
Gore, horror, people love that. I have all the respect for that. It's not my cup of tea, but I like some things are paranormal and things that are very more on the subtle side, and that's what I go for.
But even as you said, I mean, I'm sure you realize it, but it's crazy that you've hit something that, I mean, the only other person I can think of, I know there's probably more, but is John Carpenter, when people asked him, how many masks did you make for Michael Myers? And he's like, one. And they're like, but it had different expressions, like it would. And he's like, no, it didn't. Like, it's literally you projecting. And so the fact that my cohort here is like, were there bodies in those? Because it felt like
like they were real.
It just felt like they were real. And you're like, no, like that's just like that. I had to applaud you on this side. Like, my gosh, that's incredible. And again, I mean, I'll say it again because I don't want it to come off as a compliment as much as I want it to come off as just telling the truth. I don't think there's a weak film in the trilogy. And the fact that they're all three very strong, very unique, you never rehash anything in terms of old scares, but you do reincorporate things that we want to see again, because it'd be a tragedy to not have that clown back. You know what I mean? And you do find a way to use the structure in a way that feels fresh every time. You put in these little references like Russell Wynn ordering his last supper, and then kitchen's closed. Oh well, I'll just have some rolls and red wine. I'm like, if that is not messianic reference, if that's not a clear,
I appreciate
it's
that you got
just so
that.
good, brother. It's so good. And not just that, I want to work with you. Like you're the music, like it's so minimalistic but completely fresh. Hearing the piano part, I'm sitting here going, I can usually tell where something's going, and I'm like, I got every next note wrong. Like, it just was like, God, what? This is so, the whole thing felt fresh, even though it's like, at this point the found footage genre had reached a bit of a saturation point. As of genre, like a found footage movie, the fact that it was found footage wasn't enough to get people's attention, whereas earlier, like, it was just so fresh that people were like, I want to see this. At this point, it, like, you have to stand out differently. It's not enough just to be a found footage film. And this thing, the fact that it does live much bigger, in my opinion, than the subgenre, the fact that you do care about these people, the fact that I've introduced it to people as like, well, it's so it's so story driven, and then I watch it and I'm like, is it character driven? Is it like, it's just the whole freaking thing. Good job, brother.
Oh, thank you. And
We could go
especially
on.
the original, that cast really, they took over the film. I feel I feel like people like it because of what they did, and I think that cast was really great. They're still friends this day. I think they did such a good job of embodying the characters that they had, and not just the main cast of, you know, Diane and all their interviewees, and Theo plays the bearded
Yeah.
out there, and like I just feel like they all did an amazing job of making it feel real, and bringing it out, all those characters out really well too.
Thanks
I
for
mean,
telling us
I-
that they're friends, because I want to know that they're all hanging out.
Yeah.
Yeah, they are. Well, Sarah moved to LA. She's now like a really good writer, so she writes, and she's well, I guess she's now on strike, but uh, but she's really talented at writing. She doesn't act anymore, so to get her to come back for the third one, because she's like done with that, she's like actually really doing very successful in Hollywood writing. And I was like, please, I'm like, this is the send off for the, I mean, he's just coming for one day, I'll fly you out and everything. And she was cool about it. She came out, but it was seeing them all together again when we had that reunion for 3. It was great. And they all stay in touch, and Gore and Danny, Alex and Paul are really close, and and Adam and Hacker as well. So
I'm gonna act like you didn't say that, and that instead they all like share an apartment and they hang
they're
out.
all they're in a band.
Yeah.
And
Yes. Tell me
uh,
more.
they're
Yes.
touring, so just look for their tour dates. And
Will do.
Love it. I wanted
Also-
to ask about just the world building for a second with 2 and 3, because you know, you get to part 2 and you have Mitchell as one of the heroes that we
Mhm.
just heard him about in the end of the first one, analyzing all the tapes, and
Yeah.
then you bring him into play, and then you build on the mythology of the Abaddon, and then by 3 you're world building even more, and it's a new setup inside of the Abaddon Hotel with Insomnia. But even when you change things up that way, everything still feels like it all is cut from that same cloth of the original Hell House. So I wanted to ask, with building on the world of Hell House, and you've found this niche where you can build on it but not stray too far to where it feels like a different franchise. So I wanted to ask, does that come pretty naturally for you? You feel pretty comfortable like in expanding the world and staying close to what you started, or is it a bit of a challenge to like, okay, I can't go too far with it. I know what the fans want. So like what's that dynamic like when you're writing?
It hasn't been. I mean, with 2 and 3, that wasn't tough, because that 2 and 3, I always knew the story I wanted to tell, and I knew where 2 and 3 were going. And so those scripts and those stories came very easily. I told you the challenge is just, you know, working in the scares and making them original. So I never really thought there was any challenge to in that respect. But I'm not even sure if that answers your question at all. But is it? Can you ask it again? I kind of
no problem. I was just wondering, like, do you feel like with writing in this world, is it a challenge for you to kind of like stay true
I
to
see,
the
yeah.
universe, or like do you find it difficult to not stray too far with it when you're
It's
building the
difficult.
world?
I'll tell you what is difficult is staying within found footage, because I just always wanted to be a filmmaker, film school, all that stuff, and I love classic filmmaking in like terms of setups and coverage of scenes, and really being able to do whatever I want with a camera and not have to justify why is this camera on, who's holding it, and for what purpose. I mean, that has to be justified, or else it's garbage. So that's like always like, I'm like, I hate that. I just love the idea of, you know, just traditional narrative, and just having, you know, it's just the fly on the wall perspective. But that's the only thing. And every time I when I went into writing 2, I was like, would I be able to make this as a traditional narrative? Would the fans care? And if I switched from found footage and went to that, and I was like, no, I'll stick to found footage. And when I wrote the 3rd one, I asked myself the same question: can I make the 3rd a tradition? No, I'll stick to found footage. So I always want. I kind of love just, you know, traditional filmmaking, and found footage is fun because you could do so much more with found footage. Found footage is great because it cuts down on budget because it slashes your production schedule in half, since you're only filming one camera angle for every scene. So that's why filmmaking takes so long, because you got to work in all the coverage of one scene, so many different camera angles, and it's just you can only shoot a few pages a day because of that. So we're able to really make these movies for what they a lot less than what they would be if they're traditional. That helps a lot, but I so yeah, for that's the only challenge is kind of like I got to always justify the camera because I'm in the found footage world. So,
yeah, it's a minimal budget, being able to do it that way.
yeah.
Jason,
It helps a lot. It helps tremendously. Yeah.
For
So
sure.
did you have like a long going story that you wanted to tell, or did you start with the first one and with the success of the first one go to the next 2 and 3?
Well, when I first wrote the first script for Hell House, was a traditional narrative, as I said. But when you're a traditional narrative, there's a lot more exposition you can give, and there's a lot more depth to the hotel and its story to begin with. And when I switched it to found footage, I'd cut out a lot of that, because you really can't you can't give exposition the way you can in narrative in found footage, because why is there camera there? Why is someone filming this random exposition scene? So so I had to cut out a lot of the backstory of the hotel. And then so I wanted to get in there. I wanted to get the backstory of the hotel out there and let that play out over 2 and 3. Find out what the cult was doing there, who Andrew Tully was, and all that stuff. And I wrote like bases of that in the original script that I cut out, but then got into and then used 2 and 3 to get more into that what I had written and cut out before.
Okay, I gotcha.
Yeah, so yeah, it's like I just wanted to. I cut out a lot of the cult story, a lot of the history of the Abaddon in the original script from its evolution to it getting to the found footage film. But then I just incorporated that mythology into bringing out that story more and playing it out over 2 and 3.
Yeah, so I do like the kind of, again, you talked about kind of Blair Witch and everything, and I do like the kind of just not spelling everything out, and I think that's cool.
Yeah.
And I think you did a lot of that with the first one, it just showing kind of like the cult and everything, and I did really like that. But you know, sometimes filmmakers don't like to go super deep into anything or like kind of explain it, and
I don't at all. I don't like explaining things. I think it's fun for the audience to try to figure things out. And I was able to do that a lot more in 1. And then I think I did it less in 3 than I would have liked. In 3, I feel like the editing was such that it didn't allow for Easter eggs to be figured out. I think the editing was such that a lot of the Easter eggs were just the answers were forced upon the audience, which I personally did not like. I always like someone if someone says to me like, "Hey, I don't think the audience is going to be able to figure it out, like what like this reference is," and I'll be like, "Okay, well then they'll rewatch it, and and they'll eventually figure it out." I don't want to give them the answer just because upon first watch they didn't get something. And I think 1 and the original, because it was very independent and I was able to do that a lot, just put out things there didn't have any explanation really for, and then I was able to do that less and less, and you find, but I think it's good, like as you grow as a filmmaker and you have less of, I guess, like I can do less than I want, but sometimes I'm forced to give answers, I guess, a lot more than I'd like to. So,
I can say I don't want you to force answers. There are a lot of films that I love, especially like American Psycho, and other things that I don't really need the answers for.
Right. And I think that's
And
great. I love that you don't need the answer. I love I love audience members that don't need things handed to them or
Mhm.
spoon fed to them. And if they do, that's fine. I mean, that's everyone has their own tastes and everything like that. But I kind of like not spoon feeding people and letting them figure it out. And I love that you love that style too, and trying to figure things out on your own without them saying
yeah,
like,
I
"This
do.
is the reference I'm making. This is the answer to the question."
Yeah, I don't
Exactly.
want to be like, hey, here's how
It's like
everything happened,
yeah, it's just
or
like Mr. J
you
was
know,
saying about the Last Supper scene in 3. It's like you could do that subtly, people will pick up on it, maybe some won't, but it's like, or I could film it in a way where they start breaking the bread together and then it's kind of like, hey, this is like the Last Supper, isn't it? Like it really like
Yeah.
yeah,
like
exactly.
oh,
So
like it's just like fine. I like it when it's like, okay, some people will get it, some people won't. Just like
Yeah.
let's that we don't have to tell them the answer, what we're seeing. We don't have to explain everything.
Yeah, I like that you don't
I
I
spoon
like
came
feed.
a
from the
little piece of it, like just at least a little piece of it, or something to guide me somewhere. But I don't need
Oh
the
yeah, you
whole
need a
answer.
little breadcrumb of some kind.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And yeah,
exactly, exactly. And I feel like what you've done with those have been great. So
I appreciate it. Thank you. I kind of feel like I have these arguments all the time. So what you're talking about is like arguments I had just yesterday. Like with
Mhm.
people about certain scene cuts and stuff like that, or reading screenplays and getting notes on things. And they're like, yeah, I think this needs to be explained better. I don't think people are going to get it. And my knee jerk reaction is like, okay, they don't get it. That's for what? Like, okay, like,
no, do
so you
not give
gotta
it to
play like.
them. Don't
You
give it
gotta
to
give a
them.
little bit, and it's fine. And I was able to get away with a lot more in one because we were an unknown. But now I you gotta give a little and now and make
well
some
well
concessions.
3 was a cool watch for me because first time watching it, I didn't catch a lot of that stuff because when scenes like that would happen, like the Last Supper scene, I'm like, okay, this is like a scare. There's something up with Russell. He's just kind of being weird, and you can look at it as that. And then you go back knowing what his arc is, and you're like, oh wait, now I want to go back and watch it, knowing where things are
Mhm.
Yeah.
going, and then you pick up on more pieces of the puzzle as you go on. And like, I
Yeah, and
think
there's a lot of that going on. So I have a film that's coming up sometime. It's been in post production forever. It's called 825 Forest Road, and I filmed it in 2021. And it's I'm happy to say that we're like this so close to wrapping it up. But that's a film that's like this is exactly everything. Like the story is like overlapping and interweaving with just within like a basic haunted house story. And we've had and for 2 years I've had these discussions with the other producers about like how much can we explain. And I think some of this is they would say this is ambiguous. I don't think they're gonna get this. And I was like, well, that means they'll if someone does get it, maybe they'll rewatch it. And that's a good thing. But like I've been having this, but I can't wait for that to come out because it's kind of a lot of what you're saying. It's a lot of like things that are set up that you when you see something else later on, payoff later on, you want to go back and watch the setup again.
yeah.
It's a lot of that, and I tried to do. That's my favorite kind of scares where scares that have a little bit more involvement in them, that have like setups that you don't understand really what you're seeing at first, but then they pay off later, and why that was scary comes upon later, and where the genesis of that scare came from, comes from later. It's fun. The new ones that we're making is going to come out in October is Hell House Origins. It's got a lot of fun stuff like that.
Wait.
So yeah.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Mrs. J, I know that you, as we sort of start to bring it home, I know that you had a question pertaining to the hotel itself. You want to throw that one out there? Because I think that was a really good one.
Hoping. Yeah, thank you. So I thought what was interesting is as I'm watching kind of all the movies, I found it hard to sort of get a layout or some sort of whatever about how the hotel was laid out. And I likened it a little bit to The Shining. Even they do that in The Shining. And I think with Kubrick, that was like intentional, that he didn't want you to kind of know where you're going in the hotel. So was that intentional with you?
No, it was I wanted to give a little bit so actually one of the main reasons why the opening is the scare where they walk through with on the tour group is I wanted to give a little bit of perspective of what the hotel looked like. Just I thought that was something that would help our audience know and appreciate the scares more if they knew where they were, some general sense of where they were
Yeah,
in the
sure.
hotel, and you get a glimpse of things early. like a location, you see it where as it was functioning on that opening night during like chaos, and then I think you have appreciation seeing how did we get there in that location, like what did it look like when they first came upon it, and what like the what it took for them to set it up to get there. So I really did want to use that tour to give the audience a little glimpse of the space, and I think that helps more. And you know, as you were saying about Kubrick, I think what he did was well put for that. I think that was great, and it's great about him. He's a genius. Was a genius, but for me, it was not that. It was more, I wanted to my whole thing with the hotel is I wanted to show it in 3 different stages. And that was the whole I knew that was going to be the most complicated part of production, was showing a space that needed to look 3 different ways. The way the opening night when they're ready to go for the scare, the way it looked when Hell House first came upon it to set up their haunted house, and the third look was going to have to be what it looked like post disaster, years after that happened. And it's kind of like going back to an abandoned house after some terrible tragedy happens, and just like coming upon it again. It's going to have those 3 distinct looks, and so I think you can appreciate those looks more if you understand the space a little bit more. So I wasn't trying to be confusing of the space too much. It was confusing. I think the space is confusing. I've got a lot of hidden doors and compartments that are already built in there. The actors were always getting lost, which is hilarious to see security cameras like being calling up like, "Will someone help me? I don't know where I am." So it is a maze, but my whole thing is I really wanted to get across those 3 distinct looks, one location, and have that be believable.
I think you did that, and you did it well, but I think it added to it the fact that I was kind of had moments of like, where are we in this place? Like, I don't know.
I know it's I even still like I tried to give a little bit of a sense of the space, but the place is already such a maze that it was never that was never going to be achieved. So you're still going to be confusing.
Yeah, I liked it. I thought it was
cool. Thanks.
Yeah, I think it actually kind of ties into the disorientation that the characters are feeling when they've got this camera in front of them and they're trying to navigate these hallways, thinking that there's maybe someone behind him or maybe not. You know, I think it adds to the paranoia
and the claustrophobia of it all, because there's really no windows, and the windows that we did have, Hell House boarded up themselves because they wanted to be a scare. So there's places that had natural light coming into it, like the wine room when they first arrived there. It's like they had the glaring light coming in from the outside. I love the look of that. It looked great, but then later on we see it. That's a closed off window. And Hell House did that purposely because that's they said so. And then they're kind of like boxing themselves in that place and is locking in. And that was great for us. Also because we could shoot night for day. We could shoot during the day all day, and we would not have to worry about shooting at nighttime. So that helped us.
Love it. Perfect. Awesome. Well, anybody else got any questions y'all want to throw out before we bring it on home? Mr. J, you got something, or Jason?
I don't know, man. I'm just
I think Mr.
to be honest, I'm just incredibly enthused about these movies, and I've had a great time with them, and I can't believe that we got the second to talk to you, man.
I appreciate that. You guys are just way too nice. If I'd known you guys were nice, I would have my wife's in here too, so I can be like,
Mr. J, did you say you have a question you wanted to throw out as we bring it on home?
I do, and yeah, of course. You know, I don't mean to make anybody uncomfortable, but the Abaddon tapes, man, we were getting very excited. And I mean, can you speak to any of that? Are you free to speak to any of that? Is it helpful? Is it better for me not to know?
So yeah, I think there's a lot of people that jumped the gun on our end about making promises that we couldn't come through on in terms of the Abaddon tapes was one of them. But it was I'm not the series is not happening. But I think that's okay, because what the idea of the potential idea of the series, it really got my writing going and exploring more history. And I wrote out some scripts that I knew I was probably like, I'm probably not going to ever make this, but it helped so much when I wrote Hell House Origins. So it really writing a lot more Abaddon stuff for what we were hoping might be a series at some point, helped me really flesh out what I think is a really cool story for Hell House Origins. And I think if I didn't do that, then I might have not have gone down the road that I did for Origins. But Origins takes place present day, but it explores a lot of like themes and origin ideas that I wanted to get out there in the tapes, but obviously couldn't. But I brought a little bit of those story seeds into Origins, and I think it's gonna be a lot of fun. I'm really excited for people to see this. It's been a long time, since 2019, since 3 came out. So I'm just excited to have another Hell House coming out soon. It's 3 months away. So which it's 3 months away. Just remind me, I should probably finish this edit.
We're excited.
I just gave myself oh, it is 3 months away.
Right.
Sorry about that.
You're welcome.
No, I just thought
You've
it
got
must
at
have
least 4 people that are really excited about it and can't wait.
Yes.
Oh, there's
Yeah, and I
many,
think-
many more.
yeah, and I think even though the Abaddon tapes didn't happen, I think it at the very least, I mean, I was encouraged on your behalf by how excited and interested people got, and I think it showed any potential investors, any potential whatever, that like this is a commercially viable idea, that people want more. Like they're not like, and done. We're part 3, we're finished. Like, I mean, I saw it in a lot of horror groups.
Yeah. It was the outpouring of just people saying nice things on social media, Facebook, Twitter, all the time, and I'm just overwhelmed by it, and it's just really, and I just always take that as all right, people like this style of horror, and I'm so pumped by that, because then that makes me like, oh yeah, I want to write more of this kind of horror, because there's people obviously like it, that style. So that's just always just encouraging to see people they like the Hell House movies. But this new one, I just was April of 2022, where I texted someone from the distribution company out, and I said like, hey, do you think there'd be any interest in a new Hell House? And he's like, yeah, like go for it, write a script. I'm like, I have this idea, and I want to get out. And so it was just like a year from that in April to the next April where we were filming, and this story came out pretty quickly. And it's like 6 months until I had the lock draft that I wanted to film, and then the next 6 months is planning the production, and this one was very smooth, and I love the location we found, the actors, the crew, everything was great on this, and just on so many levels, I'm just so excited for everyone to see this new Hell House movie.
Amazing. And I think that it's important to note that everybody in the horror community, like you go to conventions, you talk to people, everybody in the horror community, like when they really like something, they rally around it full force.
Yep.
And I think that
horror community is the best community out there.
Right.
Agreed.
And I think that surrounding Hell House LLC is one of the best things about the horror community, is that, like we touched on earlier, Mr. and Mrs. J are the reason that Jason and I know about these movies, because of word of mouth, and because of like, I love this movie so much. Have you seen it? Here's what it means to me. And I think that you have the best thing about the horror community going around this franchise is that people that don't know about it are excited to check it out because their friends say how much they love it. And I think that's that word of mouth, and that sharing it with friends and family helps films to stand the test of time even more, because it's coming from a place of sentiment and a place of like, this film is special to me. And I think that that's an important factor with this franchise. So I'm insanely excited to see where the franchise goes from here because of that.
Absolutely. I think if you never do another movie, I still think the horror community is going to be just so grateful for your contributions, and I honestly believe, and I don't believe this about a lot of things. Um, I I I don't think there's any way that 20 years from now people aren't still watching Hell House LLC, and like I don't think it's going to be a trendy like product of the moment. I think some of the other found footage ones potentially, and again, I'm not trying to cast aspersions, but I think you know, I don't know what the staying power is, but this one, it just feels different. It hits differently. There's so much significance to it. I mean, everybody that we've shown it to, even people who don't even like horror, are like, gosh, I like that movie. I don't even like horror movies, and I love this movie. What is going on with this thing? So I love that you're still making movies. I love that you're still creating. But I also love that, you know, as much as it may sound cheesy or you know, I don't know, flattering, because that isn't my intent. I do think the horror community's been changed by these movies and impacted, and I just don't I don't see a way that it's gonna be just over. You know, people are still gonna be talking about these for a long time.
I'm gonna keep watching.
No,
Yo.
it is, and big, it's a big impact, and it's gonna be a great movie. Like, especially the first one. Like, I mean, like when Bucky told me about it, and when Mr. J said, like, hey, you gotta watch this, I finally turned it on and I loved it. And I think you did a great job. And I mean, the fact that you would take the time to talk to us is great. And we're big fans.
Yes.
Yeah, you guys are adults. I talk to a 5 and a 7-year-old most all day long, so this is a great change of pace for me.
I love it. Well,
It's an honor.
Stephen, it has been.
Well, it's an honor. Thank you so much. It's always great, especially thank you for all the kind words you guys said about these movies, and you know, great people that work on them, great actors, and what their input has been into the films has been I especially for the original, I think that people like that so much because of that cast. I think what they did was amazing. We have everyone who contributed behind the scenes, the crew, everyone did a great job. So it just and so I'm just glad that people are recognizing that everyone's worked hard on these films, and it's been
Absolutely, man. We love it. And
We do.
I did not think that I was gonna like it, to be honest.
Well, yeah, I mean, I get it. You never know about found
No.
footage; it could go either way.
Yep.
So you know, but there's so much good out there, so many fun gems to find in the found footage where you never know.
True.
You go into, you're like, I don't know what I'm gonna get into, but then it's so I love that when that happens with me so many times. And especially with found footage, just I don't know, turn it on, let's give it a try, and I'm pleasantly surprised by a film. And like Mungle's one of them, just on a whim, and that was like a Netflix DVD rental for me, and I loved it. And it was just like, I'm like, this movie's awesome. Like, I'm so glad it got in my queue. You know,
Now, that's how I
love
found
it.
Hell House. I
Yeah,
literally was just flicking past it and was like, I wonder what this is. Hadn't heard a word about it, and man, it was so hard not to overhype it to people, because I didn't want to tell them like this is the best thing you're ever gonna see. I wanted to just kind of just be like, hey, you
Let
know,
them figure that out.
if you know, if you have time, maybe, you know, maybe check it out. Just knowing that it's gonna freaking blow their minds.
Yeah, me and
And
Mr.
it was
J have
fantastic,
different.
and we
Me and
loved it.
Mr. J have different plans of attack because I'm the other way around, and I go, Jason, this movie's amazing. You got to watch it. So, but hey, Stephen, thank you so much for your time today, my friend. It has been such a
you.
pleasure and an honor to talk with you. Where can people keep up with what's coming up for Hell House LLC Origins? Is there a trailer coming up or
yeah, the trailer should come out soon. I know they were working on it. They were diving into that starting this week or last week. So hopefully that comes out soon, and that poster will have a release soon too. The best place to keep up on it is probably the distributor runs the Facebook page, the Hell House Facebook page, which is and they're really good. Posting everything, keeping everybody informed, like when new Hell House things are happening. My personal Twitter, I post there a lot about the films. So just Stephen Cognetti on Twitter, and those are probably two good sources to get information.
Well, listen, man, we are very flattered to have you on the show, and I can't tell you how much we appreciate it.
Oh,
and
it's awesome.
And and the movie's great, man.
Yeah, there's
a
good chance.
I've got to watch 2 and 3, but I love the first one.
Yeah, there's a good chance
We'll
there's a good chance our listeners out there, maybe you haven't seen Hell House LLC, any of them. Go in blind and go have a good time at the Abaddon Hotel, and maybe you'll get to leave, maybe you won't, but either way, it works out. But Stephen,
you have to have a spare 93 minutes. I think that was the runtime of the first was 93 minutes, and I had to cut that down a lot. But this new one, I had to cut it down a lot because people don't like long movies. Blah, blah, blah. This one's at this one's at 97. I got this new one down to 97.
Well, maybe if our listeners
love the first one, it's great.
If our listeners go watch it, they can go hang with Louis Tully and his buddies. It's a good time, right? But anyway, Stephen, thank you so much, my friend. It is an honor. You are welcome back anytime you would like, and we hope to talk to you again very soon. Everybody listening, please go check out Stephen's Twitter and go keep up with all things Hell House LLC. Go watch the films, go support the new one when it comes out. And that's it for, also keep an eye out for 825 Forest Road. I hope we get to see that soon. I read the plot synopsis on IMDb, and that looks amazing.
I hope that comes out to you too. I'd like to see it too.
Awesome. But thank you everybody for watching our episode with Stephen. Get in touch with us on social media under Midnight Terrors Podcast on Facebook and Instagram. And shoot us an email at midnightterrorspodcast@gmail.com. Jason, I've already said it like 30 times, but what's the show called? Do your shtick.
It's a Midnight Terrors Podcast.
Yeah, buddy. Thank you, Mr. and Mrs. J. Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Stephen. And everybody watching and listening, we love you all. We'll see you again very soon. Peace.